I gave birth to him, loaned him $40,000, helped raise his stepkids, and over dinner, between the salad and the soup, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're out of this family. Get out of my house." That was my son, Daniel, the boy I stayed up all night with during his asthma attacks, the man I helped through a brutal divorce and a job layoff. He and his new wife, Megan, had once begged me to move in with them, said I was a blessing. Now I was being tossed out like yesterday's trash. The room went still. Even the kids stopped chewing. Megan didn't flinch, just kept sipping her wine, eyes locked on her plate like this was nothing new. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up. My napkin slid to the floor. I didn't bother to pick it up. "You'll remember this day," I said, my voice low and steady, "because you haven't just lost your mother, you've lost your future." I turned and walked out. No suitcase, no plan, just my purse, a cell phone at 8% battery, and the bitter taste of betrayal in my mouth. That night, I paid cash for a dingy room at a roadside motel off I-95. Room 212. The walls smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. The ice machine was broken, and the bedspread looked like it hadn't been changed since the 90s. And still, I slept better than I had in months, because something had snapped in me, not broken, clicked, like when you finally find the loose piece in a puzzle that's been taunting you. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to keep the peace or make things easier for everyone else. I was done being helpful, done being understanding, done shrinking myself just to make room for other people's egos. And here's the twist. They thought they'd won, that they'd shut the door on me for good. But what Daniel and Megan didn't know, I wasn't just his mother. I was a retired forensic bookkeeper, and I'd been quietly tracking things they hoped I'd never find. It didn't start with shouting. It started with sympathy. Daniel called me during a storm, voice shaky. Megan had found a lump. He'd been laid off the week before. "We're scared, Mom," he said. "We don't know what to do." My heart didn't even hesitate. I was retired, living in a small condo across town with a little balcony garden and predictable neighbors. Quiet, safe, and honestly, a little lonely. So when they asked me to move in, of course, I said yes. When they said they wanted to buy a bigger house, a forever home for the family, I offered to help. $40,000 from the sale of my condo went straight into that down payment. "You'll have your own room," Megan had said, hugging me. "We'll even get you your own entrance," Daniel promised. "You'll finally have a little garden again." It sounded like a dream, the kind that warms a mother's heart. They said I'd always have a say. They called me our blessing. At first, it even felt true. Megan's cancer scare turned out to be benign, thank God. Daniel started consulting part-time. I made dinner, helped with the kids, folded laundry no one noticed. They left thank you notes on my pillow. And then, slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, the tone changed. The first shift came when they asked me to co-sign a car loan. I said no. Daniel didn't speak to me for 2 days. Next was a credit card just for emergencies, in Megan's name, but under my credit. I refused again. Suddenly, I was no longer a blessing. I was confused, rigid, stuck in my ways. They stopped asking me what I wanted for dinner, stopped knocking before coming into my room. They stopped listening altogether. I started noticing the small humiliations, the way they laughed when I asked why a check hadn't cleared, the eye rolls when I asked what happened to the garden bed I was promised. One day, Megan even joked, "We need to set some boundaries. This isn't your house, you know." I laughed along with her, but something shifted in my stomach, because the truth was, I had given up my home. I had handed over my security, and I was starting to feel like a guest they couldn't wait to be rid of. But I wasn't naive. Not anymore. Their smiles were starting to crack. And soon, so would their lies. It started with my bedroom, the one they promised would be mine. Quiet, private, with enough space for my books and a writing desk. One Saturday morning, I came back from grocery shopping to find Megan's niece, a teenager I barely knew, lounging on my bed, scrolling TikTok. "Oh," Megan said casually, "we let her use your room. She's having a hard time at home. You can sleep in the den for now, right?" The "for now" lasted 6 weeks. I slept on a pull-out couch that pinched my hip and smelled like dog. I asked, gently, when I'd be getting my room back. Megan smiled like I was being precious. "We're all family here. Let's just be flexible." I stopped being flexible when I noticed my bank statements going missing. Checks I'd written weren't reaching who they were supposed to. When I asked Daniel, he said, "Why are you always so suspicious?" Then Megan chimed in, "You've got one of those old lady flip phones, right? Maybe you just got confused." She laughed, sipping wine. Daniel didn't even look up from his tablet. I sat there in silence while they mocked me, in my own house, with my own money floating somewhere I couldn't trace. It's funny how humiliation doesn't always show up with a bang. Sometimes it arrives like water dripping from a cracked pipe. Slow, quiet, wearing you down until you start to believe maybe it is your fault. But I knew what I'd seen, what I'd given, what I'd sacrificed. And it all came to a head over a salad. We were having a quiet Sunday dinner. Me, Megan, Daniel, and the kids. I'd made Caesar salad with grilled chicken, like they liked. The room was normal, maybe even pleasant. Until Daniel said it. "You've done enough damage in this family already." He said it like he was ordering more wine. Flat. Final. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said. Then, louder, clearer. "You're out of this family. Get out of my house." Megan didn't flinch. The kids went silent. I felt heat rise in my chest. My hands shook, but not from fear, from clarity. I stood slowly, pushed my chair back. My napkin dropped to the floor. "You'll remember this day," I said, my voice calm. "Because you haven't just lost your mother. You've lost your future." I walked out, but I didn't walk away. Not really. Because they didn't know what I knew, and they were about to find out. They thought I was helpless. That was their first mistake. I spent that first night in a motel, sitting on a stiff bed, with my reading glasses perched low on my nose, reviewing a folder I'd been quietly building for months. It started with instincts. You know, the ones that whisper in your gut when something feels off, even if no one else sees it. So while they were laughing at my old lady flip phone, I was printing bank statements at the library. While they were ignoring me at dinner, I was organizing loan agreements, photocopying checks, and logging every cash transfer in a worn leather notebook. They thought I was knitting or baking or watching game shows, but I was watching them. What Daniel and Megan never cared to ask about, what they never even thought to consider, was who I used to be. I wasn't just mom, I was a forensic bookkeeper. I spent 23 years auditing nonprofit organizations for corruption and mismanagement. I've traced money through fake charities, offshore accounts, even a church embezzlement ring in the 90s that made local news. You learn a few things in that kind of job. You learn how people move money when they think no one's watching. You learn the little tricks they use to hide debt, or worse, to steal what isn't theirs. You also learn how to spot a forgery from across the room. Daniel and Megan didn't know that. They just saw me as a tired old woman who peeled carrots and paid for the grandkids, school shoes. So when they started changing things, locking me out of financial conversations, going quiet when I walked into the room, losing my checks, I started printing receipts. Every single one. I made copies of the original $40,000 check, front and back, copies of text messages where they promised it was a loan, not a gift. Photos of the garden space that was never built. Screenshots of Megan's blessing messages from when I first moved in. I even backed it all up to a USB drive that I wore on a chain under my sweater. Call me paranoid, or call me prepared. Because while they were building their little castle of lies, I was quietly stockpiling every brick they'd need to bury themselves. And I wasn't alone. I didn't plan to tell anyone. Shame keeps you quiet longer than fear ever will. But that night, as I sat on the curb behind the motel, still in my dinner clothes, staring out at nothing, I heard someone say my name. "Maureen?" I turned. It was Tony Bianchi, my old neighbor from 2 doors down, retired CPA, widowed 5 years. He still walked his dog every evening, like clockwork, khakis pressed, collar always straight. He looked at me the way only people your age know how to look at you, not with pity, with concern that doesn't insult your dignity. "I saw your car at the Royal Pines," he said, gesturing toward the motel behind us. "You okay?" I don't know why I didn't lie. "No," I said, "not even close." He didn't push, just sat beside me. His dog settled at our feet. I told him everything, slowly, carefully, like unspooling years of silence. When I got to the $40,000 and the eviction, his jaw clenched. "You have anything in writing?" he asked. I reached into my purse and handed him the manila folder. Receipts, copies of text messages, notes I'd logged in pen. The USB was still around my neck. Tony whistled low under his breath as he flipped through the papers. "You ever think they might have moved some of this around on paper?" he asked. "Changed ownership? Taken out loans you didn't know about?" I blinked. "Like what?" "Mortgage adjustments. Home equity lines. Hell, forged co-signatures. Happens more than people realize, especially when someone's got access to your documents." I felt the floor of my stomach drop. Tony stood up and dusted off his hands like a man getting ready to dig. "I say we check the land registry first, and the county clerk, see if anything fishy's been filed in your name. Then we run the numbers. If something's there, we'll find it." I stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" He looked surprised. "Because you're not crazy, Maureen. You're not wrong. And I hate seeing decent people get screwed by their own damn family." That night, we sat at the public library until closing, digging through digital records and old county filings. Tony worked the way you'd expect a man who'd survived 2 IRS audits to work. Fast, precise, relentless. And just after midnight, he turned his screen toward me. There. 1 line. 1 document. Filed 5 weeks before they threw me out. A second mortgage. Taken out under a joint household improvement loan. From my credit union. Signed with my name. The next morning, I brought coffee. Tony brought a magnifying glass. He'd printed the mortgage document on thick paper at the UPS store down the street. We sat side by side at his kitchen table, the same table where I used to drop off banana bread after church. "Let's compare it to a real one," he said, sliding over a copy of my living trust from 2019. My actual signature. Legal, notarized in blue ink. We lined them up. The real one, and the forgery, and the differences leapt off the page. "See that?" Tony pointed to the loop in the G of my last name. "Yours curves up. This one hooks down like a fish hook." I nodded, my stomach tight. "And the date," he added. "You always write it day per month per year. Old nurse habit, I bet. This one's American format. Sloppy." He was right. I'd written that way since med school. Every prescription, every chart, every permission slip for Daniel. Always day per month per year, never month per day per year. We sat there in silence, staring at the 2 documents. "This isn't just unethical," Tony said. "This is criminal. It's forgery, financial fraud, maybe even identity theft, depending on what else they've used your info for." Used. I repeated quietly. That word hit hard, because that's what it was. Not a misunderstanding. Not a family dispute. They used me. Used my name, my credit, my kindness, my silence. Tony tapped the folder. "You want to press this forward?" I looked at him. "Tony, I want my money back. I want my name off anything they forged. And I want them to know I'm not some sweet little idiot who can be erased like an old receipt." He smiled at that. Then we go step by step. By noon, we'd contacted my credit union, requested an official copy of the loan application, and asked for the original signature file. I told them to flag any account with my social security number. Tony made a list of everything we'd need next. Notarized affidavit denying the signature, file a fraud report with the county assessor, pull my credit report, look for unknown lines of credit, consult with a probate attorney, especially if they'd used my name to file anything involving the house. I nodded along, writing it all down. But in the back of my mind, something else was beginning to flicker. An old memory, one I hadn't thought of in years. It was about Daniel, when he was 16, when he borrowed something that didn't belong to him, and lied straight to my face. They must have felt it, the silence, the shift, because 2 days after I went dark, Megan broke it. The text came while I was at the DMV, getting a notarized affidavit that I never signed that mortgage. My phone buzzed. "Megan, we're sorry things got tense. Let's just all move on. You don't want to make this ugly. No greeting, no Maureen. No apology. Just that smooth, careful language manipulators use when they feel something slipping." An hour later, Daniel chimed in. "Daniel, think about the kids. They don't need drama. Let's not ruin everything over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. They forged my name, filed a fake mortgage, and used my social security number. But sure, let's call it a misunderstanding. They hadn't contacted me once after throwing me out of the house I helped buy. But now that they felt something shifting, now they were pretending we were all just a little emotional, I didn't reply. Not to either of them. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew silence would scare them more than any threat ever could. Tony agreed. "Don't tip your hand. Let them sit in it. Let them wonder." That night, I deleted both their texts and screenshot them first. Date, time, sender, everything. I added them to the folder we'd started calling The Binder. Tony made a label for it. D+M, financial abuse, pending civil and criminal review. He has a dark sense of humor. By now, I was getting my strength back. I wasn't crying anymore. I was making lists, appointments, copies. Daniel's next text came at 11:06 p.m. "Daniel, you don't have to do this. We're still family." I stared at that one for a long time. Family? Is that what we were when they shoved me out like an inconvenience? When Megan laughed and told her friend on the phone I was finally out of her hair? When they stripped my room bare and dumped my things in garbage bags on the lawn? No, that wasn't family. That was theater. And I wasn't playing my role anymore. I put the phone down, turned off the lamp, and for the first time in years, I slept through the night. The deeper we looked, the uglier it got. Tony always said, "Fraud's like mold. If you see a little, there's a lot hiding in the walls." So we kept digging. First, we went through my old checkbooks. I'm old-fashioned that way. Still keep physical ledgers. And there it was, written in neat blue ink, clear as day. Check number 2,841 minus $40,000. Memo, house loan for Daniel and Megan, NOTA, gift. I'd even circled it at the time to remind myself to scan it for my records. Funny how women are always told we're overprepared, sentimental, too careful. And yet, that circle might save me in court. We made a high-res scan of the check, front and back, added it to the binder. Then came the second clue. Tony had submitted a request to pull credit inquiries attached to my social security number, something he'd learned to do routinely after watching elder abuse cases unfold in his old firm. 2 days later, the report came back. Personal line of credit, approved 4 months ago. Lender, First Home Capital primary applicant. Daniel Wells, co-applicant. Maureen Wells, estimated credit limit, $25,000. My breath caught. I never applied for that, never saw a single document, never even heard of First Home Capital. But there it was, a new line of credit, issued in my name, tied to my SSN. With an electronic signature that didn't even come close to mine, Tony leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. "This isn't just borrowing without asking, Maureen. This is a crime. They committed identity theft, and that wasn't all. We called the credit union and asked for a full account activity history since the second mortgage had been opened. Took some back and forth, had to prove I was the person being impersonated, but when the records came through, we saw multiple payments and multiple transfers going straight from that loan into a joint account with Daniel and Megan's names on it. Loan for household improvements? Nope, they used it to pay off their credit cards, book a vacation, buy a new flat screen. Every dollar they said was for the house went to them. I sat there, holding that printout, trying to breathe. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated, strategic, greedy. And it had my name all over it. I didn't think anything could shock me anymore. Not after the fake mortgage. Not after the forged loan application. Not after watching my son and his wife spend stolen money like it grew on my back. But then Tony called and said, "You're gonna want to sit down." I was already sitting. Still, something in his voice made my stomach twist. He slid the manila envelope across the table like it was radioactive. "This was filed 6 weeks ago," he said, "with the county probate court. It was titled, Emergency Petition for Guardianship. Maureen Wells filed by Daniel Wells and Megan Wells." I scanned it once, then again. They said I was declining mentally, that I showed signs of memory loss, paranoia, confusion, that I was incapable of handling my own affairs and required immediate financial guardianship. Megan claimed she'd found overdue bills and forgotten medication. Daniel swore I had episodes, that I'd wandered out of the house and gotten lost. Lie after lie, layered in just enough concern to sound credible. They even cited my age, late 60s, widowed, prone to emotional instability following family stress. They called me vulnerable. They called me incompetent. I had cooked Sunday dinner the same week they filed that petition, baked Megan's favorite lemon pie, wiped their counters, kissed their children goodnight. I had no idea I was living in a house with people actively trying to take my name, my money, my future. I felt sick. "You okay?" Tony asked gently. I nodded, too angry to speak. Because I knew what this meant now. This wasn't just about money. This was about power. They weren't just stealing from me. They were trying to erase me. If the petition had gone through, they'd have access to everything. My pension, my retirement accounts, my medical records. They could have sold off what little I had left, legally, and no one would have stopped them. All they needed was the judge to believe their story before I could fight it. But they made one mistake. They underestimated how fast a paper trail can unravel, especially in the hands of someone who knows how to read it. Tony folded his arms. "You ready to burn this down?" I looked up. My eyes were dry. My voice was steady. "Let's call a lawyer. The thing about being erased is, it's quiet." I sat alone in room 212 of the Royal Pines Motel, watching the rain hit the window like it had something to say. But no one knocked. No one called. Not Daniel, not the grandkids, not even the ladies from church. I found out later Megan had told people I was going through something, that I'd become unstable, unpredictable. The exact language she'd used in the guardianship petition. It worked. People believed her. I suppose it's easier to believe a woman my age is slipping than to imagine her own family is stealing the ground out from under her. I had food from the gas station next door. Crackers, a yogurt, a banana I couldn't bring myself to eat. My emergency savings was down to 4 figures, and I was sleeping under a scratchy blanket that smelled like bleach and cigarette smoke. But none of that hurt as much as this, the silence. I kept thinking, surely someone will call. Maybe Daniel will wake up from whatever spell Megan's cast. Maybe the kids will ask where Grandma is. But no, and I'll admit it. That night, I cried. Not because I was angry, though I was. Not because I was scared, though I should have been. But because I felt gone. Like I'd been plucked out of my own life and replaced by a version of myself no one wanted to deal with anymore. It wasn't just betrayal. It was extinction. That's what financial abuse feels like when it comes from people you raised. It doesn't feel like theft. It feels like being deleted. I kept the lights off, just sat there in the dark, listening to the fridge hum and the rain tap. For a moment, I wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I was just old. In the way. Maybe I had done something wrong. Then I saw it. My planner. On the nightstand. Still open to the week I was kicked out. Monday, grandkids, dentist. Tuesday, refill Megan's thyroid meds. Wednesday, Daniel's resume draft due. Everything I had done for them. Still written in ink. Still loyal, even after they weren't. I looked at those pages and remembered exactly who I was. Not broken, not useless, not crazy, just quiet, and about to get very loud. Tony didn't waste time. He'd already made the call before I finished my coffee. Probate law, he said, is where paperwork becomes a sword. 2 days later, I met with Elaine Porter, a probate and elder law attorney who used to teach at the local university, early 60s. Razor sharp. Wore reading glasses on a chain and didn't smile unless it was absolutely necessary. She didn't offer pity. She offered strategy. After I laid out the documents, she took off her glasses, tapped her pen on the forged guardianship filing, and said, "We can bury them with this." It felt good. Not petty, not vengeful, just like justice stretching its legs after too long in a chair. Elaine pulled out a legal pad and got to work. Step 1. File a formal fraud report with the credit union. Flag the forged mortgage, the credit line, and freeze any further transactions connected to my SSN. Step 2. Draft and deliver a cease and desist letter, not just for harassment, but for potential criminal activity under financial elder abuse statutes. Step 3. Initiate a petition to revoke the guardianship attempt on grounds of fraud, defamation, and malicious intent. She said that last one slowly, malicious intent, like a dagger sliding out of a sheath. She asked me one question before we filed. "Are you willing to testify?" I didn't blink. Gladly, Tony delivered the packet himself, hand-delivered, with a signature required. It went to the address where I used to live, the house I helped buy. The house where they threw my things on the lawn, like garbage. I imagined Megan opening the envelope with those manicured hands. Imagine Daniel reading the first paragraph. "This letter constitutes formal notice that Ms. Maureen Wells is prepared to pursue civil and criminal charges related to identity theft, financial fraud, forgery, and attempted unlawful guardianship. A full investigation is underway." And then the final line, "Unless a full resolution is reached, we will pursue action through the district court and appropriate federal channels." Elaine leaned back in her chair. Now we wait. Either they lawyer up or they panic. But I wasn't nervous. I'd already lost everything I thought I couldn't live without. What I had now was mine. My binder. My evidence. My team. And for once, I wasn't the one waiting for a knock at the door. It happened 1 week later. Elaine arranged the meeting in her office. Not a courtroom. Not yet, but close enough. Walnut paneling. Long conference table. A glass pitcher of water no one touched. They showed up late. Daniel in a too-tight blazer he probably hadn't worn since someone's funeral. Megan in beige. Always beige. Like she thought neutrality could hide guilt. They walked in like nothing had happened. Daniel even tried to give me a little smile. That old, boyish grin he used when he wanted to borrow money as a teenager. It didn't work this time. Elaine began with introductions, then slid the fraud packet across the table with quiet precision. "We're here to resolve multiple issues: forged financial documents, unauthorized use of personal information, and a fraudulent guardianship petition filed without medical basis." Daniel blinked. Megan stared at the folder like it might explode. Elaine didn't just present the facts, she orchestrated them. One by one, she laid the documents on the table like playing cards in a high-stakes game. "Here's the forged second mortgage," filed through my credit union. Daniel had claimed we were both upgrading the property. The signatures? A mess. The notary? Already under investigation in another case. "Here's the personal line of credit using Maureen's social security number," approved while I was watching Megan's kids at the park. "Here's the loan history." Every transfer went straight into Daniel and Megan's joint account. They paid off credit cards, bought electronics, even sent a payment to a luxury resort in Scottsdale. Megan opened her mouth. Elaine raised a hand. "Not done yet. This," she said, pulling out her final folder, "is the guardianship petition." She tapped her pen under the line marked, "Sworn under penalty of perjury. You claimed Ms. Wells had signs of dementia, instability, and cognitive decline. She was actively managing her finances, filing taxes, and volunteering at the hospital during this time. That's documented." Still, they said nothing. So Elaine reached for her final piece. A voicemail. She clicked play. It was a bank employee. confirming a phone call placed by someone claiming to be me. Caller identified as Maureen Wells, asked to verify an existing joint loan and request an account transfer. Voice did not match file recording. I noted potential fraud and flagged it. The voicemail ended. Silence followed. Daniel stared at the table. Megan twisted her wedding band in slow circles. Elaine didn't need to raise her voice. Her calm was surgical. Every lie you told pulled another thread loose. You didn't just manipulate a vulnerable family member. You committed financial elder abuse. That carries jail time. I watched their faces carefully. Daniel's ego cracked first. His knee bounced. He reached for Megan's hand and she pulled away. Megan? She looked at me like I was a ghost. Not in a sentimental way. In the way someone sees the person they thought they'd buried, standing in the doorway, holding receipts. Finally, Elaine closed the folder. This is your opportunity. Make it right, before the consequences get worse. And for the first time in months, I felt taller, not angrier, just clear. I wasn't the one on trial anymore. They were. Elaine folded her hands. Her voice was level. Dead calm. The kind of calm that made even me nervous, and I wasn't the one in trouble. Let me be very clear, she said. You have two options. She placed a slim legal document in front of them, freshly printed. Option 1, you return the full $40,000 loan, in monthly installments no less than $2,500. You withdraw the guardianship petition in writing before the end of the business day. You close every joint account and remove Maureen's name from every line of credit, application, and bank record, and you agree to a no-contact clause effective immediately. She tapped the second sheet. Option 2. We pursue civil damages for identity theft, elder abuse, fraudulent misrepresentation, and defamation, and refer the full case to the district attorney's office for criminal charges, which will include felony forgery and attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Daniel finally spoke. His voice cracked. This feels like overkill. She's our mother. Elaine didn't even blink. That's not a legal defense? Megan turned to him, her voice sharp now. I told you not to file that guardianship thing. I said it would backfire. Elaine raised a hand again. No side conversations. I leaned back and just watched. I didn't need to say a word. They were unraveling faster than I could have imagined. You think a judge is going to side with you? Elaine added. You forged legal documents. You weaponized guardianship laws meant to protect the vulnerable. You stole tens of thousands of dollars. And worst of all, she leaned in slightly. You did it to your mother. That one landed. Daniel's face drained of color. Megan looked down at her lap like the floor might swallow her. I spoke. Finally, my voice didn't shake. I'd rehearsed these words for weeks in my mind. I offered love, support, money, stability, and you repaid me by trying to erase me. So no, I don't want your apologies. I want my name cleared. I want my money back. And I want you gone from my life. Megan cleared her throat. We'll need to review with our attorney. Elaine slid the packet forward. You've got 48 hours. We left them sitting in silence, staring down at their future, now written in black and white, with my name on every page. 2 days passed. They didn't call, didn't show up. No lawyer reached out on their behalf. Just silence. That same smug silence they thought would keep me quiet. But the moment they missed the deadline, Elaine moved. And so did the world. She filed a preliminary complaint with the district attorney's office and sent copies to the credit union's fraud division, the county probate clerk, and quietly, strategically, Daniel's employer. Corporate accounting at a mid-sized logistics firm. Background checks are routine. Fraud triggers flags. Turns out, you can't manage corporate funds while under investigation for financial elder abuse. By the end of the week, Daniel was on administrative leave, not fired, but close enough to make him sweat. Megan didn't fare better. Elaine made sure the PTA president at their kids' private school received the affidavit we prepared, the one detailing Megan's involvement in the fraudulent guardianship petition. By Friday, Meghan had been removed from her fundraising coordinator role. Not fired, but quietly pushed out. Her name disappeared from the website the next morning. And then there was the church. I hadn't been back since I moved out. But word travels fast, especially when your daughter-in-law has been whispering lies about your mental decline in the back pew for months. Elaine didn't have to do anything for this part. Someone, I don't know who, showed the pastor what was happening. Maybe Tony, maybe a friend who still believed me, maybe someone Meghan underestimated. All I know is that Sunday, Daniel and Meghan's names were no longer listed in the church bulletin under volunteer families. Their picture disappeared from the newsletter. No announcement, no drama, just erased. Funny how that feels, isn't it? And for once, it wasn't me being erased. It was them. The masks came off, and people started to see. I didn't revel in it. Not exactly. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't sleep a little easier that night. Tony called it poetic justice. Elaine called it strategic pressure. I called it earned. Because when you rip apart someone's life for money, when you weaponize trust and wrap it in family language, there should be consequences. And now, they were living them. They folded. Late Friday afternoon, Elaine's office received a signed agreement, scanned, time-stamped, and sent through a third-party paralegal. No apology, no negotiation, just compliance. They knew they were cooked. Full repayment of the $40,000 in monthly installments of $2,500. First payment due in 10 business days. Complete withdrawal of the guardianship petition with a written statement admitting it was filed in error without sufficient basis. Immediate closure of all joint accounts. Full removal of my name from any mortgage, credit line, or financial document they'd fraudulently attached me to. And the best part? A legally binding court-backed no-contact clause. They couldn't call, they couldn't show up, they couldn't use their kids as messengers. It was over. And it was legal. I didn't smile when I read the documents. I didn't cry either. I just breathed. A slow, even breath, like stepping outside after a long storm. Elaine asked if I wanted to pursue criminal charges anyway. She said we had more than enough evidence. Forged signatures, false statements, misuse of my SSN to put serious pressure on both of them. But I told her no. Not because I wanted to protect them, not anymore, but because I didn't want them to have one more second of my energy. Let them live in what they created. Let them wake up every morning knowing I have the binder, knowing I have their lies printed, signed, dated, knowing they're only free because I allowed it. Besides, I had things to do. I took the first payment and hired a real estate agent. Found a quiet condo 2 towns over, small, clean, full of light. No one else's name on the deed, just mine. There's a walking trail out back, cardinal's nest, and the trees. The neighbors smile and say hello, then go on about their lives, the way I like it. One afternoon, Tony dropped by with a bottle of wine and a grocery bag full of tomatoes from his garden. "You know what I like best about your place?" he said. "What's that?" "It's quiet. No manipulation, no pretending, just peace." We sat on the porch, no words for a while. We didn't need them, because peace isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's earned. Through fire, through loss, through standing your ground when the people closest to you try to tear it out from under you. It was exactly 7 days after the final papers were signed. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of tea, watching a squirrel try to outsmart a bird feeder, when my phone rang. "Daniel." I let it ring twice before answering. Not out of hesitation, just control. His voice came through raw, panicked. Mom, I need your help. Meghan's gone. She took the kids and left. The bank froze our account. I can't even, Mom, I didn't say a word. Just let him spill. He sounded like a drowning man, asking the person he pushed off the boat to throw him a rope. She said I ruined everything, said I dragged her into something she never wanted. The PTA moms won't even look at her anymore. And now Now I'm getting HR notices, and the lawyer says we might lose the house. Still, I said nothing. He finally stopped talking. The silence pressed in. Mom, please, just tell me what to do. What to do? The irony. The same man who told me to get out of his house now couldn't afford to stay in it. The same man who tried to steal my future now found himself with no future at all. And I wasn't gloating. I wasn't cold. I was clear. So I spoke quietly. The way you speak when a chapter is done and the ink has already dried. Daniel, when you threw me out, you weren't just cutting off your past. You were cutting off your future. He started to say something. I didn't give him the chance. I loved you. I raised you. I gave everything I had. But I'm not your safety net anymore. That ended the day you decided I was disposable. I could hear his breath catch. I hope you learn from this. I really do. Then I hung up. No dramatic goodbye, no forgiveness speech. Just a quiet click. I set the phone down. Picked up my tea. The squirrel finally got the seed. I smiled. Because I wasn't angry anymore. Not bitter, not scared. Just free. Thank you for listening to the end, liking the video, and subscribing to the channel. Have you ever given everything to your family, only to realize too late that they saw you as a wallet, not a woman? Share your story with us in the comments and tell us where you're from. We read every word.